Hello, if you're watching on Facebook, I've not been on here in a while, but I'm making this one both for Facebook and YouTube, but recorded it in Facebook just so that you know I'm still alive and breathing, because I've been taking some time out here and I've been away with family for a couple of days, just travelling around. So I'm back, and this is kind of partly a little chat about what is going on over in Hollywood with, if you're following it at all, the Blake Lively court case, legal drama that involves Taylor Swift and Justin Baldoni. But also just want to talk to you, because what I'm doing over on YouTube is that I'm unpicking some of the elements of this drama and analysing what it actually means emotionally. Because you know, there's plenty of people out there unpacking the court case and the details and the who's right, who's wrong, who's evil, who's scum, who's a narcissist, you know. And I'm trying to look at it a bit like, isn't this interesting? What can it tell us about everything? I mean, there's so many cases going on right now in Hollywood, including the Diddy case, that should be making us all question what life is all about and what we are doing to ourselves when we focus on being self-centered and on being an individual and on somebody else being to blame for things, and, you know, being underhanded and not thinking of the greater whole and all of that. This is what happens. You get court cases like this where people are tearing each other to shreds and proclaiming themselves as right or justified, or it has to go their way, whatever it is. So yeah, so right now, the last kind of thing that we've heard is that allegedly Blake Lively has been trying to extort Taylor Swift into putting out a statement in support of her, especially since Taylor Swift didn't invite her to the last Super Bowl, which of course all the media picked up on and all of that. So Blake Lively, allegedly, again, apparently said via lawyers, to Taylor Swift's lawyer, that put out this statement backing me up, in support of me, saying what a lovely human being I am and how right I must be, and I'm standing up for all women and all girls. I mean, I imagine that's what Blake wanted her to write. Otherwise, I'm going to unleash 10 years of our private text messages, or at least your side of things, all over the internet. So of course it's reached a point now where Blake Lively has kind of picked a battle with the wrong person, because you don't F with the Swift and you certainly don't F with the Swifties and Taylor's family and the whole support organisation behind her. So Taylor Swift kind of herself doesn't publicly comment on things like this, but she has ways and means of getting the job done, and that is what will happen. But yeah, I just thought it was worth having a conversation about what a threat this is in terms of any of us having, say, 10 years or even like a month's or a week's or sometimes even a day's worth of our text messages being made public. I know myself in the past, I was very good. When I wasn't as enlightened as I am now, I was very good at accidentally sending the text to the wrong person, you know, accidentally sending the text complaining about somebody to someone else, sending it to the person I was complaining about. I was guilty of doing that a time or two. I'm much more spiritually enlightened now. But yeah, and I think all of us can say we've done that at some point or other. But it is that thing of, in text messages, we feel like we can, and many of us feel like we can say anything we like, that it doesn't have the same comeback as being said in person. And you know yourself, either by email or text, you will have had times when somebody took entirely the wrong perspective from the words you'd used, and maybe being offended by it because they couldn't see your face, they couldn't hear your tone of voice, they couldn't tell any sarcasm or wit in the tone of your voice, whatever it is, and it can come off very blunt and all of those kind of things. So this idea of having all of your text messages released to the press, and especially when it's a very close friend, and when you're somebody like Taylor Swift, who won't have very many people in the greater sphere that she holds in confidence and feels like she can talk freely to. And bear in mind, Blake Lively is the godmother to at least three of, we believe it's three, at least three of Blake Lively's children. So she would have felt like that was a safe space. So you know what I mean? If it's a gal pal, you might have been talking about text. You might have been talking about what you thought of somebody's looks. You'll have been talking about what somebody did to you. You'll have been venting and showing the worst of what's going on. And that's kind of what I want to talk about is if you're not sure whether you have a problem with your ego or victimhood or being judgmental or being unforgiving, then you need to go and look at your text messages, because your text message stream will tell you a whole lot about yourself and what's going on in your mind. If you're in your text messages and you're constantly saying, the world isn't fair, so-and-so didn't do this, this is never available to me, I never get anywhere, why can't so-and-so see my point of view, why don't they just get it? If there's a lot of that in your text message stream, then you have issues that you need to deal with and you might need some help with, because you're living from the perspective of your ego and being in victimhood mode. And that's kind of what Blake Lively is doing. She didn't get her own, if you're not following the case, basically she didn't really. She kind of got her own way in that she stole somebody's movie out from under them and she controlled everything, and she even put him in the basement at his own movie premiere, this guy who was the lead actor and the director, and it was his production company that made it. She extorted him, allegedly, throughout the process of making that movie. If you don't do this, I won't do this. And she held the production to ransom, basically, and made him sign off on things, made him agree to things. So basically, if you just saw the promo for that movie, It Ends With Us last summer, you would imagine that Blake Lively was both producer, director, writer, lead actress, composer. You would believe she'd done all of those things. But then, because the public picked up on some of the things and the public said, hey, where's that guy that's actually directed it? Why aren't we seeing the two of you together? Why aren't you talking about him? Why are you promoting Betty Boos and Betty Buzz and your hair care line and all of this thing in a movie that's about domestic violence? And because she didn't like all of that, what she did, as somebody that lives in victimhood mode, as in if everything doesn't go my way then somebody else must be to blame, then as that kind of person, she turned on Justin Baldoni and says, you have to accept responsibility for the public taking a turn against me. And he'd actually done nothing. I mean, if you're not caught up on it already, there was like text messages that she's kind of allegedly, I can't keep on to say that, illegally obtained. And that's the interesting thing, going back to text messages, because what we've seen in this case is what happens with text messages when you take them out of context and when you tweak them ever so slightly. I mean, in terms of this case, there's a text message stream between two of the publicists involved that were working for Justin Baldoni, and they're kind of having a little joke back and forwards with each other and saying, oh yeah, we're doing such a good job of more or less rubbishing Blake Lively, because one of them was crisis PR and one of them was his standard PR person. But what they're actually doing is joking, because what they're laughing about is that, gosh, we kind of had these plans in place if we had to use them. But kind of look, she's kind of doing it to herself. We didn't even need to have a plan. She's just literally detonating herself. So they kind of had a jokey thing where it was sarcasm and there was a sarcasm emoji. But when Blake Lively has come to use this in her case and blah, 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 she has allegedly had that emoji removed, the sarcasm emoji, which totally changes the perspective of the conversation and makes it look like these two women are accepting blame for having created this campaign against her. So that is what I'm saying about what a risk it is to Taylor Swift, this idea of having 10 years of her text messages sent out to the press. What a huge threat that is, because like I say, you imagine any one of us, it would show kind of the darkest elements of our soul, really, and it would show up every element of how judgmental we are, how unforgiving we are, sometimes how unloving we are, sometimes, you know, how critical we are of everybody around us. And what it literally would be is not you at heart behind all of the hurt and all of the pain and all of the things that haven't gone right in your life. You know, for many people, your text message stream is, oh, it's all the ego. It's all the ego mind perspective. It's the superficial stuff that doesn't mean anything in the broader perspective of life. It's the day-to-day superficial human being, first world problems, you know, that nobody in their right mind should be worrying about. And just bear in mind that your ego is that tiny portion of your mind that kind of catalogues all the hurt that you've ever felt, all of the slights and the imagined things, and it's that thing that whispers in your mind and tells you that everything has to be a battle and an argument, and nothing's ever going to go right for you because you haven't seen proof of that in the past, and somebody has to be right, somebody has to be wrong, somebody has to have retribution against them, all of that. So yeah, I thought it was just worth a little heads up for those of you maybe who aren't following the case, in that it's a very interesting one in terms of it's challenging lots of things, like, you know, we've just come through the Me Too period where it was all about believe women, and now it's like this Blake Lively just seems to be using that to to forward her own narrative on things. So it's like, when are we going to start believing people, not one side, not another side? When are we going to start looking beyond the superficial and start looking at what's good for everybody and collaborating, instead of creating needless fights and needless arguments and needless fallings out, all in the pursuit of personal power? So I've been making a series of videos over on YouTube which is all about, can we look beyond getting angry about stuff? And I mean, because some people are getting a little bit heated now in terms of this idea of right and wrong and who's guilty and judgment and the unfairness of it all. But all of that feeds ego, so it is something that you've got to be really careful of. So on YouTube, I've been trying to create some useful videos that are about, like, the emotions behind it and what are the pitfalls of that way of thinking and the holes that you get yourself into. Because here you've got Blake Lively, who should have the world at her feet, because there's never enough for her. She's always trying to fill some gap inside, so she always needs more power, more control, more authorship, pushing people down and all of that. It's led to a situation now where she's literally self-detonating because she's so invested in that persona of hers and getting her own way and not understanding what no means or somebody else's perspective, that she's literally hit a brick wall now, where she's come up against a person who seems to be, to all intents and purposes, a fundamentally good person who's taken as much as he can take, but has finally, you know, hit his limit when he's been accused of being a sexual harasser and is being put into the position of fighting back. And now all of Blake Lively's chickens are coming to roost, basically, because every negative thing she's ever done is being shown to the world, you know, and everything's coming out. And this is what happens when you live from a purely ego-minded perspective and you refuse to see other people's needs or what's good for the whole and all of that, when you're entirely focused on what's right for you. And it's a very painful way to live as well, because when your needs always have to be met by somebody else and somebody else has to be responsible, then there's always a weakness in you and something that can be exploited, and you will always feel like you need more stuff. That's often how you will have some kind of addiction, that you'll need more cigarettes, more alcohol, more food, because you're filling up that hole inside because you don't feel good enough. Your source always has to come from somebody else. and people always have to be doing for you. When you live in that victimhood mentality, you are always vulnerable because help always has to come from somebody else and somebody else has to solve it. And you always need a person in your life that is going to facilitate you. And that works to some extent, but it doesn't work all the time because you can never truly rely on somebody else to fulfill your needs. So you have to work on strengthening your own self and sorting out your own issues in order to build that strength inside, so that no matter what, if you're the only person left on this world, that you know that you're going to be all right and you can handle it because nobody else has to meet your needs. It's nice if they can, but it's not their responsibility, it's yours. So yeah, I want you to think about that today. And if you're not at all sure whether, you know, if you blithely think that you have no problems whatsoever, there's nothing wrong with you, everything that's wrong in your life is coming from an external perspective of things being done to you, then please go do look at your own text message stream and kind of look at it, or feed it into ChatGPT and tell it what even and ask it what kind of problems you can foresee this kind of person's mentality causing. But yeah, go and look at your text message stream for pick out a few conversations and just analyse it as if you were a third party person looking at this, and what kind of things would you be starting to think about this person? You know, is it a kind person? Is it a judgmental person? Is it somebody that seems to lack forgiveness? Is it somebody that seems to be a victim all the time, that somebody else is always doing something to you, somebody else should be doing something for you? You know, you're stuck in this relationship and they should do this and they should do that. Meanwhile, what are you doing? You know, if there's something wrong in your relationship, that's a 50-50 thing, isn't it? And if you feel like you're stuck, you can't do anything about it, that, you know, is that true? Or is it a story that you're telling yourself because you'd rather be feeding an ego mind narrative than actually sorting out the issues? Have a look at it and see what you think in all truth. But yeah, I imagine Taylor Swift was having a good old look at what her text between her and Blake Lively had been saying for the last, you know, so long. You know, Blake Lively was wanting her to delete the text. Apparently last December she got in touch and asked basically Taylor to delete the message conversation. This, you know, even probably before legal action was even being taken, she was preparing for what might come out. So it's all very interesting. So if you're watching this on Facebook, please do consider looking at my YouTube channel. You can find me, it's at charmed-Anna, all lowercase. I'd love to have you go over there and hit like on a few videos and subscribe. Or if you're watching on YouTube, please do consider subscribing and sharing. And thanks for watching and staying to the end. See you later.